Welcome to Blackbird Writers Presents Author Interviews. And today I am so honored to have with us Robert Dugoni. Robert is the author of the critically acclaimed Tracey Crosswhite series, the Sloan Legal Thriller series, the Charles Jenkins Espionage series, and many award-winning standalones. He is a New York Times bestselling author and the winner of the Nancy Pearl Book Awards for Best Fiction. His books are hailed by the Washington Review. He is an Amazon bestseller, and the Providence Journal described him as the undisputed king of the legal thriller. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we first met this summer, very briefly, at the Writers Police Academy. And you were the guest of honor and the keynote speaker there. And when you told the story of how early in your publishing career, your publisher sort of dumped you, your speech really moved me. I happen to be standing in that very place right now. And your tale was just so uplifting. And I imagine there's a lot of other authors that are in similar situations these days. And do you mind talking about this for writers who are struggling? Because
yeah, there are many authors that find themselves in this position, or in the position that I was in, and that's simply a product of big publishing houses have quotas to meet and things like that, and authors don't always get the attention that they need and or deserve. I was a new author. I was writing the David Sloan series, and I went to this publishing house because I really liked the editor that I had there, and then that editor moved on, and a new editor came in, and that new editor just had a totally different way of operating, et cetera. And part of that way was not really to promote my work, and not even to put my last legal thriller out in paperback, which at the time there was no Kindle. And if you're a genre fiction writer, paperback is how you sell 85% of your novels. And then they said to me, well, your last novel didn't sell well enough, so we're not going to continue the relationship. I could have argued and said, well, it didn't sell because you didn't put it out in paperback, but there was no point to that. At some point you just have to say, this is a blessing. This is a positive thing. If this is how someone is going to treat you, you don't want to be at that publishing house. And I think too often writers get caught up in the opposite. They feel like, they want to have a publisher so desperately that they really compromise their own principles, and they compromise, who they are and what they really want. And I wanted more. I wanted more, and my agent felt that I deserved more, and I wasn't going to get it there. And once I just really came to that conclusion, I did really think of it as a blessing. I thought of it as, this is good, and it's scary because, you're trying to support your family, and I had young kids at the time, and all those things, but it's a business decision. And I think the sooner that writers realize that while this is an artistic endeavor, when the book gets back to New York or wherever it is to be published, it becomes a business,
right.
And it's important to treat it as a business, and to realize that there's really nothing personal about it. It's simply business, and businesses make the wrong decisions all the time. Yeah, it happens. I was fortunate, because of what happened. I decided that I needed a new series because, a new publisher wasn't going to want to pick up the David Sloan series after what happened with the last book, et cetera. So that forced me to come up with a new series. And I came up with Tracey Crosswhite, who has been, uber successful. I then, when my agent went out looking for publishing houses, all the publishing houses in New York were looking at the numbers and saying his last book didn't sell. And again, you can sit there and try to explain to the publishers why the book didn't sell. But again, if that's really what their focus is that really where you want to be?
Right.
And in the midst of all this, Amazon Publishing, this is 2012, Amazon Publishing had been after me for a number of years because I'm a local guy. I live in Seattle, where Amazon Publishing is based. and they really felt that they could break me out, and they felt that that would be obviously a positive for me, but also a positive for them to have an author that they could really break out. So I went and I met with them, and it was like night and day. I met with probably 10 to 12 people, and I was by far the oldest person there, probably by 20 something years. I had a wonderful editor by the name of Alan Turkis, and I just had a number of people there that were telling me all kinds of things that I had no idea, algorithms about who my readers were, and all those things. And I walked out of that meeting, and I called up my agent, and I said, I don't care what they offer up front. I said, I'll take this deal. And I was really betting on myself.
Yeah.
I was betting on myself, and I was betting that I could succeed. And, they have been tremendous with me. They have just been fantastic. They work with me throughout the entire process. They give me say on things. They ask my opinion on things. They help me. They help edit me. They just have been truly what I think a publisher really needs to be, which is a partner,
Yeah.
somebody that I'm working with as opposed to somebody that I'm fighting with.
Right.
And
And I think that's the important thing that you're talking to, is that writers need a team behind them and people that are, supportive. And I think that's really important, for authors to, get their work out there and to be confident, with what they're doing.
yeah, I think too often we get caught up in the whole idea of, we've worked so hard on this novel, we just want to see it out in the world, but that's not really what it's about.
Right.
It's about getting people to read your novel, and what is your publisher going to do to help get readers to read your novel? There's a lot of novels that are put out every year, a lot of
A
novels that are
lot.
put out every month. So how is your novel going to make noise? What are they going to do? How are they going to help? And really, what it comes down to is word of mouth. The book business is really a word of mouth business. Once your book catches fire and people start talking about it, and they start talking about it in the book clubs, and all these other things, that's really what sells books, is readers' word of mouth.
Yeah. And, a lot has happened since 2012. And I was watching a couple other interviews with you recently, and you said that you released like 6 books in the since the pandemic.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. And I know a lot of authors had trouble, because of the pandemic. For me, it just didn't really change much. In fact, I would apologize a little bit about it, because, my day really wasn't impacted. I'd get up, I'd walk down the hallway, I'd come to my office, and I'd go to work. And I love what I do. I mean, I absolutely love what I do. And much of what I could do right here. I could make phone calls, I could do research. I could do all kinds of things. The library system has online research that I could do. And hang on one second, I got to get rid of this.
No worries.
And so it was great, with respect to being able to just sit and write in peace. And I did. I truly enjoyed it. I'm also fast. I'm very fast at my writing. I don't outline. I used to outline, and I found it just was not right for me. I'd waste all this time on an outline, and then I start writing, and the characters would sort of begin to tell me their story, and I was off the outline. So, I really, I'm an organic writer. I come up with an idea, I come up with my character, and I let my character begin to talk to me, and I let him continue, or she to continue to talk to me. And I continue to take notes, and I continue to do research, and until I really feel comfortable with who that character is. And then I write my first draft like I'm writing an outline. I never edit. I don't edit in my head. I don't say, no, you can't do that. I don't do any of that. I just let the story come, and I let the story go. Because I also tell myself that nobody ever is going to read that first draft except me. Right. My wife, my mother, nobody is ever going to read that first draft, especially not my agents or my editor. That is for me to begin to understand who my characters are, what my characters want, need, or desire,
right,
and how they're going to get it. And then I go back, and then I start digging into it, and I start, doing all the things that I teach. When I teach the craft of writing, I start looking for all those author intrusions and all those, things that slow a story down, and yada, yada, yada.
Right. Yeah, that's really great. I finished The Extraordinary Life of Sam Howell recently, which is just phenomenal, by the way. And it was also a Suspense Magazine Book of the Year in 2018. So you seem like an author with no shortage of ideas.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I don't consider myself a thriller writer. I don't consider myself a mystery writer. I consider myself a writer. I've always been a writer. When I grew up reading books like The Count of Monte Cristo, The Old Man and the Sea, The Great Gatsby. I read them at a very young age because I was getting in a lot of trouble in school, and I started getting extra work. And so I started to read all these classics, the Count of Monte Cristo, uh, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I mean, just everything I could. And I began to envision myself as writing those kinds of novels. You fast forward and you get older and you realize, well, I need to have a career to fall back on. I got into the law. Legal thrillers became huge when I was in law school because of John Grisham and Scott Turow. And so obviously that was a sort of a segue that could carve a path, because I was a lawyer and I knew what I was writing about, or thought I did anyway. But I always had in the back of my mind, I always had this idea of, that I really wanted to write more literary type stuff, not exclusively. I mean, I really enjoy writing the mysteries and the thrillers, and you learn so much writing them that I think
the
it really
structure.
helps
Yeah.
with your literary, because I don't waste a lot of words in my literary novels. And in my genre fiction, I've been called the most literary of the genre fiction writers. So I think there's a great balance there.
Yeah.
And I was just years ago, I was sitting at my desk and I was contemplating whatever, and this young kid started talking to me. And I
Yeah.
didn't know who he was or why, but you start to play on the things that's in your life, what you grew up with. I grew up in
Yeah.
Burlingame, California. It was sort of this bucolic existence, where you would ride your bike, around the neighborhood all day and go play Three Flies Up at the park
Did you
and
go
do
to
all this.
Catholic school like
Went to
Sam?
a Catholic grammar school back when they had nuns that were still teaching, and the priests would come out into the schoolyard and play basketball with you. And it was just sort of this bucolic setting. But underneath that setting, all the problems that exist in life existed. You just didn't see them as a kid, but now as an adult, you could look back and you could see them. And so I had that perspective as I began to create Sam.
Yeah,
And
he's
it's really
great.
not a story of a young boy telling a story. It's a story of a man telling a story about his growing up and
Right.
his coming of age. And I think that's really sort of the distinction there that really grabs people, because so many of us, whether you are, it's not a book about Catholicism at
No.
all. It's a book about hope, and probably faith more than
Yeah.
religion.
Yeah.
And so here was this young boy going through this, very difficult experience because he's got an infirmity. He's got ocular albinism. He has red eyes, and he you can't cover them up back then. You couldn't put on color contact lenses. They didn't exist back when he was growing up. So you had to learn to deal with it, and that's what his mother was, and his friend Mickey. So that was something that came to me, and it was just always sort of in my wheelhouse. It's what I wanted. And I was really blessed to have a publisher that was very open to the idea. They were nervous about it, rightfully so. You walk away from, a best-selling series to write a literary novel. But the book
It's great.
it took off. It just
It's
literally took
fantastic.
off. We've passed 1 million in sales. I mean, it's just done really well.
Well, I can see how, it would touch so many different people in different ways, with the boy character, and then as an adult, what he's going through. And there's that love story too. And it's about faith, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, as I've gotten older, I'm 61 now. What you begin to realize is that everybody has something. Everybody. Nobody goes through this life unscathed. You see people and you meet them and they just seem like they're the strongest person you've ever met. And then you get to know them and they start telling you things like, oh yeah, I went through a depression, or I have anxiety, or whatever it is. Everybody has something, and that's what makes us human. And I think the more we start to talk about those things, the more we begin to accept them as a society. The fact that I have anxiety, and the fact that you have anxiety doesn't mean you're weak. It just means you have it. It's what's something that you're dealing with. I think that it makes me the writer that I am today, because I think I'm better able to empathize with a lot of my characters and what they're going through. And I'm also a little OCD, which is why I can get books done so quickly, because I'm always thinking of the next book and what I'm going to do. So
Right.
everybody has something, and I think we all just have to learn to accept people for who they are.
Right. So I was reading the back copy of one of your next books, which is The World Played Chess. And it said that that's the follow-up to.
Yeah, that's a mistake.
Okay.
It was a little bit off. I think it said, I think it said something as to the effect of, following up on his best-selling literary novel. In other words, it's my next literary novel.
Right.
Not
I was
that
trying
it's
to
the
figure out
next
how
sequel.
they're related,
No,
and they're not.
they're very different. They're very
Yeah.
different. There's a lot of similarities in that the young man is growing up in Burlingame, California, and it's a coming of age story about three men. One who goes off to Vietnam, one who goes off is getting ready to go off to college, and one who's in high school, getting ready to go off to college. And so that's a book that I was, contemplating what's my next literary novel going to be, what am I going to write, and it just kind of came to me. The summer of my senior year in high school was really a pivotal year in my life, because not only are you're sort of leaving behind your high school, and you're suddenly a man,
Hmm.
and you're expected to be a man, right? You're expected to go off to college, and you're expected to take care of yourself, and get all your classes, and suddenly your parents aren't holding your hand anymore. And so I started thinking about my senior year, and I started realizing how pivotal that year, that summer was in my life, because it was really the first time that I met people outside of that bubble. People that had been to Vietnam, people that had served in Vietnam, people that had a totally different perspective of life and some of the things that they went through. That was just diametrically opposed to what I had been growing up believing and understanding. The more I thought about it, the more alive it came to me, the more real it came to me. All the juvenile stuff that my high school friends and I would do, because we weren't thinking about consequences. And yet you had these guys that were not much older than me, 19, 20 years old, where, they make the wrong mistake and they blow up. They step on a landmine because they're not paying attention. They're gone. And the more I thought about it, the more the book began to appeal to me. And I wrote a first draft, and I sort of stole some of my son's high school years when he was really a very, very good high school football player. And I wanted to be sure that he was comfortable with what I was writing. And so I let him read an advanced copy. And it was him. It was my son who came to me and said, Dad, I think this character William is fascinating, but I'd like to know more about him. Why is he the way that he is? Nobody ever talks about the Vietnam War. What happened to him over there? Why is he the way that he is? He came out of high school seemingly, prepared to do so well and everything. And that's where I came up with the idea for the journal. What was William's year in Vietnam like?
Oh,
And I didn't serve in Vietnam. I've never been in the military, and so I was really concerned. I wanted to make sure that I got it right. I thought I owed it to the men, mostly men. There were
right.
women that were over there as well, but I felt like I owed it to the men who served over there and who died over there and who came home to get it right. So it was a tremendous amount of research, but
I
I'm so
bet.
glad I did it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is a historical novel, right?
It's really a coming of age story, I think, more
Hmm.
than and one of the men coming of age comes of age in Vietnam. I never intended it to be a war book. I think that the cover is absolutely beautiful. I think it's a stunningly beautiful cover. But unfortunately, I've had so many emails from people that will say, I wasn't going to pick this book up because I don't normally read war books. And and then they say, and I read it and I was like, wow, it's really not a war book. I think it's really a book that young men in particular should read. And I've had a lot of high schools that have said, we're making it mandatory reading in our high school. My
Wow.
high school, my all boys high school, had me come back and talk to them about, what it was, that those kinds of things. So
That's
it's
great.
it was yeah it was yeah, I'm really, really very, very pleased with it, and it's done really well. I hope that it does better, because I think there's a lot of good that it can do, just like Sam Hell.
Right. That's amazing. Um, So let's talk a little bit about the Tracy Crosswhite series. Um, I mean, mostly, I guess, because you have the Tracy series, which is detective books, the Sloan, which is legal thrillers, and most recently, you're doing the Charles Jenkins series, and that's international espionage. So you're juggling a lot of characters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you ever going to go back to Tracy?
Oh yeah, no, Tracy number 10 came out September, I think. I'm trying to remember when it was. Came out in September and has really done very, very well. And people continue to say, because the next book, in the Tracy series is already written, and I think it's called One Last Kill. So I'm getting all these emails from people saying, this isn't going to be the last book, is it? It's not. No, it's not going to be the last book. Tracy will always be my anchor. Tracy will always be the thing, the person, the characters in that keeps me going. These other ones are books that I will branch off if I come up with an idea. For instance, I was in the middle of looking at something for the next Tracy book. I have a new series coming out in legal thriller with a character named Kira Dugan, and that'll be out in March, called Her Deadly Game. And she's a defense attorney. Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of looking through my wife's grandfather's scrapbooks. He kept scrapbooks of his career. He was a very prominent lawyer here in Seattle back in the 1930s and 40s, 50s. And he got in 1938, so in the midst of the Depression, he was hired by a man who was accused of murdering a lightweight boxer in his nightclub. So this man was running a nightclub in the Depression during Prohibition. You can imagine he was part of the underworld. And the name of the club was the Pom Pom Club, and it was located on Profanity Hill. Well, if that doesn't scream book,
right?
I don't know what does. And so he had clippings of the day the shooting took place, the day of the arrest, the day of the first trial, throughout the trial. And I just went to my wife and I said, this is just absolutely fascinating. I mean, the characters were so colorful, and what lawyers could get away with in a courtroom back then, you could never get away with today. It just made it really interesting. So I called up my editors and I said, I really think I have a great idea for a book here.
Yeah.
And they said, let's see what you got. And so I wrote that book. That's with my editor right now. She's been going through it. And in the interim, I did something which I've never done, which is I'm working with two gentlemen on a World War II book. They have done tremendous amounts of research, and it's a phenomenal story. And they asked me if I would write it. And again, my agent, my publisher, were very open to it because it is such a great story.
Wow.
And so it's something that, that's what gets me up every morning and gets me to the computer is that excitement of something new and something interesting. And that's not to say Tracy isn't, because every new book I write about Tracy is a new story, a new book. There's something new to explore. A reader emailed me the other day and said, you haven't written about Kensington Row very much lately. And I emailed back and I said, you're right. He's going to be in the next book. I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring him back in the next book. And I'm going to find a way to bring him back. I have an idea and he's going to be prominent. So yeah. There's a lot of things.
How do you decide which book is next?
Whatever I'm
excited about.
Yeah. A lot of people say, write what you know. And I don't think that's the right the right mindset. I think what you should write is write what you're interested in.
Yeah.
Write what gets you out of bed in the morning and gets you to your computer because you just can't wait. I mean, I don't know how it is for you, but I finally decided to take weekends off. Well, by the time Monday morning comes around, I'm just itching to get back in here and get back to the story I was working on.
Yeah. No, I don't take weekends off. But I get my mornings to myself, which is really great. So I have like 4 hours to myself. I'm like, this is perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so you said that you want to write what you want to write, but what experience do you bring to the page?
Well, my experience is I'm 61 years old. It's everything that I've been through in my life. Relationships that I have been through that I screwed up, relationships that the other person screwed up, friends, all the friends that I've had, the bullying that I did and didn't even realize I was bullying somebody, being bullied, That moment when I went off to college, that moment when I started working on a crew with two guys not much older than me that had a world of experience from Vietnam. And I was like this naive idiot. My first sexual encounter, all those things are things that you bring to the table.
Right.
And you can't be afraid of writing honestly and raw, because again, what I think what we talked a little bit about is everybody has something. And I can't tell you the number of times I've been at a conference and I will bring up the subject of the fact that, I have anxiety. So I have characters that have anxiety at times, and I'll have 8, 10 people come up to me after and say, thank you for talking about that. Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you for being honest about it, because they deal with it.
Right.
So we all have a world that has happened in our lives, and you have to think of your characters the same way. When you open page 1, Tracey's 45 years old. Well, she's lived for 45 years. So what happened in her life? What influenced her? Why does she see the world the way that she sees the world? And I think that's what every author, he or she, brings to their books, is their unique perspective on different things that have happened in their lives. I've heard people say, I don't know if I could be a writer. I haven't really traveled anywhere. I haven't done. That's horse manure. Yeah. And that's not what it's about. If you want to write espionage, there's a lot of different ways you can go about it. But really, books are about the human experience, and everybody has had a human experience.
That's true. Yeah. Do you what advice would you give to authors about do you use mapping tools or Bibles when you go back into your series? How do you remember all of those characters that you wrote before?
So Amazon creates a Bible for me.
Oh,
and
wow.
with every book that I write, they update the Bible. The kind of car Tracey's driving, what color it is, how old her daughter is, blah, 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 blah. They create all that stuff for me. But that's really not the most important thing. I think the most important thing, the mistake I made when I started, and I think the mistake that a lot of writers make when they start, is they don't understand the craft. They don't understand what a story is. They don't understand how a story is told. And once I figured out that there are books out there on the subject that can tell you, Christopher Vogler's book, The Writer's Journey, Saul Stein's book on writing, Donald Moss's book, Writing the Breakout Novel, Stephen James' book, Stories Trump Structure. Once you learn how a story is told, and you study it and study it and study it and study it, then the characters come alive within the confines of the story.
Right.
And too often, new writers get caught up in this great character, and the characters all over the board. And that's not what I'm talking about when I say I'm an organic writer. I'm an organic writer, but my characters come alive within the confines of my story. And I think that's the most important thing that any writer can do, is learn story structure and learn it so that it's innate. And then you don't have to worry about outlining, because you know how a story is supposed to be told.
Right. And you work with Stephen James too on your the writing intensive.
Yes.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to do a class with him at one of the Thriller Fests a couple of years ago, and he's really great.
He's really good. He's worked at teaching for 20, 30 years. And he's that teaching involves reading a lot and understanding what stories work and what stories don't work and why they don't work, and all those different things. So I think that once you understand how a story is told, then you can focus more on your characters coming alive within the story. And people get worked up about twists and this and that. Really, twists are just obstacles that were unexpected.
Yeah.
And that's all a twist is. It's an unexpected obstacle. And it's so great for me to get an email from a reader saying, I never saw that coming. I never saw it coming. And it's so exciting for me. But you have to play fair too with the reader. You can't just go off on a tangent. So story structure, learn story structure, learn how people have been telling stories for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I think that will help any new writer.
Yeah, that's awesome. So thank you so much for talking with me. And how can writers or readers get a hold of you?
So, I have an Amazon author page. I also have a website,
Mhm.
www.robertdugonibooks.com. And on there, you can email me through the website. And so, and it's very simple. And that's really the best way to get a hold of me. I have all the
Right,
social media handles that all authors have on
right.
Facebook and on Twitter and on Instagram and things like that. And I hear from authors all the time. I mean, readers all the time. And I sit and watch TV at night, and I answer all my emails. I don't the emails that I get. I figure if people are willing to take the time to write me, then I should answer them, and so I do. I answer them personally.
I appreciated that.
Yeah.
And if people are interested in the writing intensive.
The novel writing intensive, we do it once a year, usually 2 classes. If you're interested, you need to get on it today because we just opened up the sign up period for the next 2 weeks. So the next 2 classes, they're about 3.5 days each. It's going to be in Orlando, Florida in November of 2023. And we already are over half full.
Oh, wow.
And we just opened it up yesterday.
That's
So,
amazing.
so people look for it. So go to the novelwritingintensive.com. The
Okay.
novelwritingintensive.com. Our administrator is Pam Johnson. She's excellent. Email Pam. Tell her if it works for you. Tell her which one you're interested in, and she'll get you on the wait. She'll get you in or get you on the wait list.
That's great. That's awesome. So thank you so much for chatting with me today.
No, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
It's been an honor.